can't attend today, so you can watch it. Let's see. Can't attend today, so you can watch it. Let's see. Okay, so let's begin. Let's share my screen. Let's go to the quiz. And a lot of the quiz, the questions that I picked were to do with a lot of the terminology because one of the biggest reasons that people struggle with learning a new science is the terminology, right? So in our science, in this science, things like essence, attributes, positive, negative, all that stuff, right? If you understand the terminology, you can understand most discussions. So obviously the purpose of this class is to increase our iman and to look at the different proofs and get a good understanding of Aqidah, but it's also to give us a technical skill to understand theological discussions, right? From Muslim scholars, and to ask the right questions, avoid the wrong questions and things like that, right? So that's why I focused on a couple of those things. Um, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you Shifa, Sister Deborah. Okay, so inshallah, let's begin. I can't move this my screen for some reason. Oh, because this is full screen. Okay. All right. Can you guys see the quiz window?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let's go through this. Actually, let me take the quiz so it'll be easier to show. Okay. So the first one, what is an essence? That should be pretty easy, right? So that which makes a being what it is. Okay, so if you change the essence, it becomes a different type of thing. At some point, an apple is an apple, and at some point, it changes into a pear. Okay, so that which makes a being what it is. So what is an attribute? An additional meaning added on to the essence or a property of an essence. Okay, you could call it a property or you could call it an additional meaning. Okay. So when I say red apple, so red is an additional meaning I'm adding on to apple. Okay. So if you just look at apple, red is not essential to an apple. An apple could be green and an apple could be yellow, whatever, right? So red is an additional meaning that I'm adding on to the essence. It's not essential to it. What is the difference between the attributes of God and the attributes of created things? So this should be pretty easy, right? So the attributes of created things are constantly changing. The attributes of created things are not necessary for them, right? God's attributes are necessary. It's not like he could have had this attribute versus that attribute. All of those attributes are necessary. The attributes of God are necessary and eternal. Again, uh, now this is obviously wrong, right? The attributes of God could have been otherwise. Okay, so that's not true. What knowledge can human beings understand about God's essence? Okay, so they can know nothing about it, like absolutely nothing. That's not true, right? Because we have proofs for God's existence, so we do know something about it. Um, so here's the answer. They can know only what it is not. Okay? We can know something about God's essence. What is it? We can know that it's not it did not begin at a certain point, right? Or God's essence is not like any of creation. God's essence is not time bound. Okay, it's not space bound. So that's those are the things that we can know. We can't know anything positive about it. What is the primary way to know and get close to God? So is it by thinking about his sorry, by not thinking about. So those are incorrect, right? By pondering on the effects of his attributes in creation. Okay. What are the negative attributes of God? Remember, we said sifat salbiya. Sifat salbiya is the technical term. Negative attributes. It just it's these things that we just talked about, right? They can only know what it is not about God's essence. So negative attributes are those attributes that do not affirm an added meaning, but tell us what God is not. Okay. Which below describe or are attributes of meaning, positive attributes? So this one is a little tricky, right? So remember, there are meanings added onto his essence, okay? So I kind of give you the answer, okay? If you look in attributes. So what is an attribute? An additional meaning added onto the essence. Okay? So if you remembered that, you should be able to get this one. Okay, I know that's a little tricky, but yeah. There are meanings added onto its essence. Okay? Positive attributes. They're telling us something positive about himself. Okay? They're not denying something from him. They're affirming something. Okay, so eternal power, obviously, eternal will, eternal life, infinite knowledge. Okay? Is this a positive attribute, by the way? Him being completely unlike creation?
No.
No, good. Because this is a negative attribute, right? You're saying he is not like creation. Okay. So I mean
Yeah.
these distinctions like they don't really matter. They're just like it's just for us to better understand these attributes, but people use them in literature and in when speaking, so it's important for us to know. Okay. What is the difference between negative plus positive attributes and the 99 names? So I think a couple people got this wrong, but remember, Ahl Sunnah, Ashari and Maturidi, Athari, we don't deny the 99 names. Okay, this is an accusation most people make against us. But no, we don't deny the 99 names. We just have different buckets. We're just organizing them differently for the purpose of teaching. Okay? So the negative positive attributes are just classifications of the 99 names. Okay, these are the primary attributes that you can group all of the other names under. Or you can look at them as these specific attributes that we're talking about, eternal power, will, life, infinite knowledge, so on and so forth. These are the things that it's followed upon every Muslim to know about God. Okay? Like for example, if one of the names of God is one of the names of God is Al-Muhaymin. Al-Muhaymin. So if you don't know that name, Al-Muhaymin, does that mean like you're not a Muslim? Like,
No.
how many of you knew that name? Al-Muhaymin. Anyone know that name?
I think I've heard of it. I don't know meaning off the top of my head.
Okay, yeah, there you go. You know the name, but you don't know the meaning. So does that now somehow mean that your iman is suspect?
It shouldn't.
No, obviously not. But let's say you didn't know that God is all powerful.
That would be a problem.
Exactly. So that's what we mean here. Al-Muhaymin, the preserver, is just a species, it's a type of power, eternal power, right? So what the scholars did is find the core essential attributes that we cannot deny, right? As a Muslim, every single Muslim must know these attributes, or else their iman is suspect. So these are the mother of the attributes, and that's why we put them like this. Okay? Eternal power, eternal will, eternal life. Like if you didn't know God is living, right? This is a big problem. Infinite knowledge. And then we have speech, right? God is speaking, God is seeing, God is hearing. So these are very important attributes that if a Muslim doesn't know them, then their iman is there's a problem in their iman or they might not even have an iman if they don't know that God is all powerful, all willing, He's living, He has infinite knowledge. Okay? But there are many of the 99 names that are variations of these attributes that, I mean, I don't know a lot of them, right? I don't know all 99. So that's the only difference. We don't deny the 99 names. The 99 names are not, no, that's not true. There are less than 99 names, obviously not. There are infinite names. Okay, there are 100, there are more than 100. They're found all over the Quran and the Hadith. What are the sifat khabariya, the textual attributes? I put this question. You don't need to know this really, but this is such a dividing line between Muslims. I mean, this is like the first thing that people of a Salafi persuasion will bring up and start debating over and dividing the community. So this is something for us to understand because when they bring this issue up, you will know, oh, he's arguing about sifat khabariyah. And then you can ask him, like, why do you guys argue about this so much? Like, did the Salaf argue about it? Right? Is this something that the Prophet ﷺ taught us to argue about? Like, why do you guys focus on this so much? Okay? So this is something for us to understand, just so we don't get duped, right? So sifat al-khabariyah, the textual attributes, they are affirmed of God in the sacred texts that are not the 99 names nor the foundational attributes, okay? So these are attributes affirmed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we find in the hadith and the Quran. And remember, I'm saying attributes because the Maturidis uh, affirm them to be attributes. But the Asha'ira, they affirm some of them to be attributes and some of them to not be attributes. They're not attributes at all. Now, why do they do that? Well, because you need to have proof to affirm something of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you just have a weak hadith, like how are you going to affirm that as an attribute, right? I mean, how is it possible? Like, for example, for people of a Salafi persuasion, they will act on a weak hadith in matters of, in matters of aqidah, but they will not act on weak hadith in matters of practice. In matters of like, if I were to say, if you read Surat Yasin this many times, you're gonna get 6,000 rewards in Jannah. Now, our Salafi brothers will come and say, this is bid'ah, this is incorrect, this is from a weak hadith. Well, ya akhi, why do you then take weak hadith and affirm attributes of Allah, right? We should be more careful when it comes to Aqidah, right? We should be way more careful. So this is why the Ash'ara, if they find certain attributes in hadith, they won't affirm them. They won't, if they don't believe that these are strong enough evidence, they won't affirm them as attributes. They'll just affirm them um, as meanings that we don't really understand properly. Okay, but the Maturidi will affirm all these as attributes. Okay. So that's why I said attributes, because the author, Aqidat Tahawiyya, and the Maturidi school in general will affirm them as attributes. These are attributes found in the sacred text that we affirm without tashbih. Okay, so again, we affirm these attributes. Yad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ayan, the two eyes of Allah, Wajh, the face of Allah. All of these are affirmed for Allah without tashbih, without assigning a created meaning to Allah. What is this yad, this attribute? We don't know the haqiqah of it. But it can't be this. It can't be this hand. It can't be something like this hand. Never. Nothing in the species of this hand or any type of created thing. It cannot be. And this is the position of the Salaf. They didn't want to go into delving into the interpretation of these attributes. Attributes found in the sacred texts that on a literal reading seem to affirm a created part for God. Okay? So if you read these literally, you would be affirming some created part for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is bid'ah, and it can lead to kufr. It can lead to kufr. That if you affirm that Allah is a physical being, this is kufr, right? If you affirm literally that Allah is a physical being. Because if you affirm Allah is a physical being, who are you agreeing with, by the way? Which religion are you agreeing with?
Christianity.
Christianity. Good. So, right, yeah. The irony is very interesting. So attributes found in the sacred text that we affirm literally, no, we don't affirm them literally. Yad, ayan, two eyes, wajah, yes, these are the textual attributes. Attributes found in the sacred texts we reject because their meanings are inappropriate. No, we don't reject them. We either we assign their meanings to Allah and we say we don't know the true meaning of them and we just keep reading. Okay, this is the position of the Salaf, or we find an appropriate meaning for those words, okay, which we call ta'wil. Okay, and we don't say that this must be the meaning of the word. We just say this could be a meaning or this could be a meaning. Who knows? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Okay. But the second procedure is something that is controversial and many of the ulama has have rejected doing ta'wil. Only a small group of ulama have done ta'wil and it's not advised. Not every word attributed to God is an attribute, such as forgetting or deception or illness. Okay? So that is obviously true. And that's going back to Sifat al-Khabariyya. Just because a word has been attributed to God in a sentence does not make it an attribute. You need to bring proof to show that something is an attribute of Allah. Okay? The scholars from the first generation would not interpret the textual attributes and reject affirming any created meanings to God. And they would consider debating on this topic to be a bid'ah. Okay? They would not want to debate on this topic. Um, the human beings create their own actions with their power, which is false. Human beings do not have any type of intrinsic power. So how do human beings have free will? What is the relationship between human choice and the actions that human beings do? Well, there's an unknown relationship, we said, okay, that gives us moral accountability, and we call this kasb. Okay, there is some relationship. Okay, it's not as if human beings are like we're not fatalists that we have absolutely no free will. There is some unknown relationship, and that relationship is called kasb, and it gives us moral responsibility. God's pre-eternal knowledge, it does not compel a human being using his will. Okay? And we said that God's pre-eternal knowledge creates Zayd according to the knowledge of how he would be. Okay, God knows from pre-eternity. Zayd, a human being with these characteristics and these situations and his free will, he would do X, Y, Z. And based on that knowledge, God creates him. So there's no compelling going on there. Okay, because the agent is using his will. Um, Now, God's pre-eternal knowledge forces they to be in the hellfire without their own choice. No, that's not true. Unveils for God the past, present, future with complete disclosure. Okay? And unveils isn't really a good word, but it's just how it is. Because unveils would imply that at one point something was veiled for God's knowledge, which is not true, right? It's just a complete disclosure. Is not an attribute of causing an effect. God's knowledge or knowledge of any type is not an attribute that causes an effect. There's only one attribute that causes an effect, which is what? It actually creates things. It causes effects. Which attribute? Anyone? The eternal power, right? So that's the attribute that causes things and has effect. Another attribute of causation and having an effect is the eternal will. Okay, so will also has. Sorry, the sunlight is coming through here. So will also has an effect, and its effect is specification. Okay, specifying things. But knowledge itself doesn't have an effect. Okay, knowledge just knows things. It doesn't affect something else. Um, what are the central topics discussed in the science of Aqidah and Kalam? Uh, Hopefully you guys got this right. Ilahiyat, Nubuwat, and Sam'iyyat, transmitted belief. What is the difference between a Nabi and Rasul? A Rasul is guaranteed success in his mission, Why does Allah punish a people who deny the Rasul? Because they have been shown miracles and still reject the truth. Because the whole point, again, of human beings is وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. The whole point of human beings is to put them on this earth as a test and to have them worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And if they're shown every proof of that purpose and they deny it, well, you throw out the trash. It's as simple as that. What is a miracle? A break in customary natural order at the hand of a claimant to prophethood with a clear challenge to replicate what has happened. Remember, we said a person that claims to be God can be given, quote unquote, breaks in customary order, but it's there to delude them even further. Okay? Because intelligent people would not consider a human being to be a God. Somebody with aql, Allah has given all of us aql, we would not consider a human being to be the necessary being. What are what are some of the missions of the Prophet ﷺ to establish the foundation of character, to teach sidq, um, okay, to teach sidq, truthfulness, and amana to humanity, okay, to teach tawheed, which is the highest manifestation of truthfulness. Okay, so that's it. So hopefully I get full score. Wow. Okay, that's interesting. Oh, sorry. I looks like I accidentally put that. Yeah. Okay, we should be good. So I accidentally chose this. Okay, so that's why I got 18 out of 22. Any questions?
Nope.
No questions on the quiz? Then we'll get started with class, inshallah. We'll have a very short class today because obviously we had this quiz. So okay, so let's get started with class. Rahim. Okay. Let's go to Aqidah Tahawiyya and let's read. You guys can see the text, right?
Yes.
Okay. Right. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى وإن القرآن كلام الله منه بدأ بلا كيفية قولا وأنزله على رسوله وحيا وصدقه المؤمنون على ذلك حقا وأيقنوا أنه كلام الله تعالى بالحقيقة ليس بمخلوق ككلام البرية فمن سمعه فزعم أنه كلام البشر فقد كفر وقد ذمه وقد ذمه الله وعابه وأوعده بسقر حيث قال تعالى سأصليه سقر فلما أوعد الله بسقر لمن قال إن هذا إلا قول البشر علمنا وأيقنا أنه قول خالق البشر ولا يشبه قول البشر. Let me see if we should read. Let's read this too. ومن وصف الله بمعنى من معاني البشر فقد كفر فمن أبصر هذا اعتبر وعن مثل قول الكفار زجر وعليه وعلم أنه بصفاته ليس كالبشر. So Imam al-Tahawi, radiallahu anh, he says the Quran is the word of Allah. It came from him as speech without it being possible to say how. He sent it down upon his messenger as revelation. The believers accept this as the truth. They are certain that it is in truth the word of Allah Almighty. It is not created as is the speech of human beings. Anyone who hears it and claims it is the word of a human being has disbelieved. Allah has condemned and censured him and promised him the fire of Saqar, where he says, I will roast him in Saqar. This is in Surah Muddathir, when Allah promised the fire for a person who says, "This is nothing but the word of a human being." We know for certain that it is the word of the creator of human beings and that it does not resemble the word of human beings. And the Prophet ﷺ has a hadith on this topic. He says that فضل كلام الله uh, فضل the difference between kalamullah wa kalamul bashar, right? The difference between the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the speech of human beings is kafadlullahi ala sa'ir al-khalq. That it's like the difference between the greatness of Allah and all of creation. That's how different Allah's speech is to regular human speech. It's as if it's the difference between Allah and His creation. Okay, so وَمَنْ وَصَفَ اللَّهُ anyone who describes Allah with any of the meanings of human beings has disbelieved. Okay, we just spoke about this in Sifat Khabariyah. Whoever sees this should take heed and refrain from statements like those of the disbelievers, and he should know that Allah with His attributes is not like human beings. Okay, let me see if there's more on the no, this is the section of the Quran. Okay, so today's discussion is going to be on the Quran. And you might be thinking, why would he have this in here? Because every Muslim would believe that the Quran is the word of Allah, right? But what exactly is this referring to? Well, um, there's a very famous controversy that happened. Let me present this, by the way. So there's a very famous controversy that happened in Islamic history, which solidified the difference between Sunnism, the people of the Sunnah, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and the people of the Hadith and who got their teachings from the companions and the Prophet ﷺ, and the what we call the rationalists or the people that went their separate ways. It really solidified that difference. And it has to do with a controversy known as Khalq al-Quran, right? The createdness of the Quran. This was a very big controversy. It led to the deaths of many people. It's the first and only Inquisition in Muslim history. Okay? And that Inquisition, it wasn't against other religions, it was against uh, sort of fellow religionists, right? So there are two types of things we'll speak about in regards to the Quran. I wish I could speak about even more stuff, right? But just for the sake of time, maybe we'll do a special topic on the themes of the Quran and uh, more in-depth stuff on the Quran after we finish the class, inshallah. Because we'll have a couple weeks left, so we could do like a special topic. Um, so the first thing we'll talk about is the uncreatedness of the Quran, the Khalq al-Quran controversy, and the position of Ahl Sunnah. What do we mean when we say the Quran is uncreated? Okay. Number two is we're going to discuss some of the miracles of the Quran. So some information in the Quran that could not have been possible for the Prophet ﷺ to know. And it is mentioned in the Quran, so this proves a divine authorship. Okay. So um, the controversy of Khalq al-Quran, it happened during the time of Khalif al-Ma'mun. Khalif al-Ma'mun. So he's one of the great Abbasid caliphs. And um, what happened is that unfortunately, yeah, for a lot of the scholars that were first exposed to Greek philosophy, they they were debating with Christians, they started trying to create a proper theology for Islamic beliefs. Okay? And when I mean proper theology, I mean when somebody does theology, they're trying to systematize everything, right? It's not just if you look in, for example, Aqidah Tahawiyya, it's just a bunch of disparate points. This is what we believe, okay? And if you ask a regular Muslim, what is your Aqidah? They'll say, read the Quran, okay? So this is what we believe. It's in the Quran. Well, obviously it's in the Quran. But if if people are now asking you like technical questions, because look, the Christians in Damascus, right, in Egypt, in North Africa, these Christians are very sophisticated people, and this is why, and their heads been like muddled up with Greek philosophy and Roman philosophy and Byzantine Christian theology. So these people are like their heads like deep in the waters of this stuff. Okay. And that's actually one of the reasons that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't send a prophet to these people. Because even if a prophet came to them, they would not accept. Right? And you can tell this by people today that study philosophy and things like this. I mean, you have to ask them, what are the parameters of a an answer that you will accept? And they can't tell you. Anything that you give to them, they will tear it down. They'll use their reason to tear it down. They'll find faults in it and the argument. And if you ask them, well, you present to us a positive case. Give us something positive. Ask the atheist. Teach me how to live my life. Nothing, right? They don't have any arguments. They can only try to find faults. And this is how the Quran describes those people, right? In a very miraculous way. But either way, Muslims encountered Christian theologians. And this led to a lot of problems. This led to the responding to the Christians, right, in an adequate manner, learning Greek philosophy. And the first group to really spearhead this type of stuff are the Mu'tazila. Mu'tazila. Okay, I'll put it in the chat. Um, where'd it go? So the first group to really take the lead on this are called the Mu'tazila or the rationalists. Okay. And what they did is just as the Christians believed in a concept called divine simplicity, which is that God's attributes are the same thing as his essence. There aren't these extra things called attributes of Allah. Okay. Allah doesn't have attributes. Allah's Allah, He's existence. Okay? So Allah's attributes are just a reflection of His essence. He doesn't actually have attributes. So if you were to say Allah's knowledge, this is only a metaphor. This is not true. Okay? This is what the Christians believe. And till this day, if you study Thomist theology and philosophy, they'll follow in the footsteps of Avicenna and they'll say the same thing. Okay? And also they'll say things like, the attributes of God can separate from him, right? Because remember, Isa alayhi salam is the logos. He's it's all, as if he's an attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that's separating from him and indwelling in the world. Okay, and then you have the Holy Spirit, right, which is also a different. And then so you have all this entire theology. So the Mu'tazila, they present Islam in a way that sometimes it leads to some very big problems. Okay, because they're debating with Christians. So the Mu'tazila, for example, they'll say that they'll deny Allah's attributes. Okay, they'll say that no, Allah can't have attributes because the Christians made a objection to them. He's like, well, if you say Allah has attributes, well, are the attributes eternal? The attributes are eternal. Does that mean that there are multiple eternals with Allah? Now you're affirming multiple gods. You see? Do you guys get the objection or no? Should I repeat it? That
Yes,
if Allah
can
has,
you repeat that?
yeah, so if Allah has attributes, you're saying Allah has this thing called life, that there's this thing called power, that there's this thing called will. Are those things eternal? And the Muslim will answer yes. So the Christians will come along and say, well, look, you guys are affirming multiple eternal things with God. So is there one God or are there multiple eternal gods? You see the issue here,
Yep.
right? And so the Mu'tazilah are like, no, 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 we're not affirming those things. We just Allah's essence, that's it. That's the only thing that exists. But Allah acts with life as if he has life. Allah acts with power and so on and so forth. So we don't affirm attributes for him, but we affirm that yes, he is living, he is, you know, he does create things, right? So same thing here. The Mu'tazili will deny that Allah has an attribute of speech. You see? So this is where the controversy begins. So they won't say Allah has an eternal attribute called speech, kalam. But they'll say, yeah, Allah speaks. How does Allah speak? He creates sounds and letters and other people, and this is the only way he knows how to speak. You see the issue here? Right? So they deny the attributes to please the Christians or whatever it is in their back and forth, right? But they still trying to preserve somehow the understanding of the Quran and Sunnah, but this is a very distorted understanding. So they're denying that Allah has an attribute of speech, but they're saying no, the only way that Allah can speak to human beings is He creates that speech. He creates it in somebody else, but He Himself can't speak. You see?
Hmm.
So this is the issue. And this is a very big issue that happens. Okay? And the person for the hour, for the person at the time, Caliph Ma'mun, he adopts this idea. And this is a big problem because Caliph Ma'mun is one of these builder caliphs. Okay, so he builds the city of Baghdad, like he completes it. This is like the golden age of Islam, Greek philosophy, the house of wisdom, science, medicine, all the cool stuff is happening under Caliph Ma'mun. So you can imagine that Caliph Ma'mun adopts the Mu'tazili doctrine. Now, why did they adopt the Mu'tazili doctrine? Unfortunately, because the Mu'tazilis were the judges of the empire. Okay? These judges, remember Omar yesterday I said for the first 500 years, who were most of the judges of
Yeah, Hanafi.
the Hanafis? Yes, unfortunately. So this is a really bad rap for us. Okay? Okay? So most of the judges of the empire were Hanafis, okay? So some of these people became Mu'tazili, unfortunately, right? It is not because the Hanafis are somehow Mu'tazili. No, no, this is Hasha, right? The Maturidis from the Ahl Sunnah, they start refuting the Mu'tazilis as well, okay? But it just so happens that most of the judges of the empire were Hanafis, and we explained, yesterday's class why that was the case, because the Hanafis are awesome. That's the short answer, right? But uh, so some of these people become Mu'tazili, and they have influence over the caliph. And so they're telling him, look, this and whatever, and Caliph Ma'mun adopts this idea. And what do? They go on an inquisition because for whatever reason, the Mu'tazilis have convinced Caliph Ma'mun that whoever believes Allah has attributes is doing shirk. I mean, imagine how insane that is. So whoever believes Allah has attributes, you say Allah has an attribute of life. He has an attribute of power. He has an attribute of speech. He has these 99 names. Now, if you believe it, apparently you're doing shirk. Now, why would they say that? Why do you think? Remember what we just talked about? That if you believe in eternal attributes with Allah, you're affirming what? You're affirming multiple gods. Okay?
Oh, right.
So you see how distorted this is getting. So the Mu'tazilis are like, we are the defenders of Tawheed. Okay? So this is like the extreme, this is like the reverse of what's happening today, where some of the extreme, Wahhabi type of people, they think that they're defending Tawheed. Okay? But it's a very distorted understanding. Same thing here. Same thing here, right? With the Mu'tazila. So and then we'll answer this objection. It's coming up. Okay, so and then so Al-Ma'mun starts they start questioning the scholars, right? Any scholars that have public positions that are teaching, they get questioned. Okay? A lot of them remain silent. A lot of them try to dodge the answer. A lot of them try to give like a conciliatory answer. A lot of the scholars are tortured, right? They're tortured because they won't stop teaching. Okay. So at this time, I mean, there was a big climate of fear in Baghdad because the Mu'tazilis are in control. Okay. And at the same time, a lot of the Mu'tazilis, they're forging hadith. Okay. And just as a side note, one of the biggest proofs that the hadith are reliable is this episode right here. Okay? Because if the hadiths are made up by political institutions, as you know, these silly PhDs in the Western institutes or whatever, right? They claimed, now they can't claim it. Now they're sort of changing their view. If the hadiths are made up by political institutions to justify XYZ, the Mu'tazilis created so many hadiths. Where are they? Have any of you found a Mu'tazili hadith in any of the hadith books you've read? Bukhari, Muslim, Riyadh al-Salihin, 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi. Any of those made it in there? What do you guys think?
Doubt it.
The Mu'tazilis ruled for 100 years. That's
Okay.
like half of the age of the United States, right? So still, all of their hadiths were filtered out, right? Yeah, some of them made it in, but they all got filtered out, sifted out. This is the biggest proof that the hadiths are reliable, right? That political institutions tried so hard to corrupt the ideas and beliefs of Muslims through injecting these false hadiths, and there's tons of false hadiths, okay? Um, um, uh, so but they all got filtered out. Okay. Even hadiths that were criticizing Mu'tazilis. So a lot of the people of Sunnah also forged hadiths to criticize the Mu'tazilis. Okay. Very famous one that Jonathan Brown, Dr. Jonathan Brown puts in his book is whoever says the Quran is created, he will be resurrected on the day of judgment with his butt as his face. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Do you think the Prophet would say something like this?
No.
Just out of common sense, right? No, right? So another one like whoever says the Quran is created, he will be made into a donkey, right? So I mean, you got to put a little bit more creativity in when you forge a hadith, right? It can't be this dumb. Um, so yeah, so hadiths in support of the Mu'tazila and hadiths against the Mu'tazila, both of them got filtered out. They're not strong because they're made up. People made them up. So if 100 years of political influence could not corrupt the hadith sciences, like I don't know what else would be able to corrupt the hadith sciences, right? So this is one of the biggest proofs that the hadith are authentic. Okay, so during this mihna, during this inquisition, there was a great scholar um, who really challenged the authorities. Okay, and this was Ahmed ibn Hanbal. Ahmed ibn Hanbal. And Ali ibn al-Madini, who was one of the greatest people of Hadith, right? Ahlul Hadith, he said that truly Allah supported this religion through two men, to whom there is no third. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh during the Ridda Wars, the Wars of Apostasy, and Ahmad ibn Hanbal during the Mihna. And why would he say this? Because there were points in Islamic history where it seemed as if the Muslim world was about to become corrupt. It was about to fracture and break and go into a million pieces. But there's one person that was assigned at the time that he stood strong and he did not compromise. And people never expected that this person would be that person. No one expected that. Okay? The first is Abu Bakr radiallahu anh. We know about Abu Bakr that he's a soft-hearted person, right? He leans into things. Sometimes, people can sort of dissuade him from doing things. He doesn't have the type of, it seemed that he doesn't have the type of resolve and determination as Umar radiallahu anh. Okay? When he became Khalifa, all these Arab tribes that accepted Islam, remember we said that the Arabs have to accept Islam. They don't have a choice. The Arabian Peninsula cannot have idolatry. Okay? It cannot have idolatry. Banned. Okay? If you want to do idolatry, go somewhere else. Um, so some of the Arabian tribes, they leave Islam. Okay? And they don't leave Islam explicitly. They start to negotiate with the pillars of Islam. They say, we'll pray and fast, do everything. That's fine. We believe in Allah. We don't want to give zakat. If you deny the zakat, what happens? You deny zakat. What
That's
happens?
part of being Muslim. So I think there was a
Yeah.
time Hazrat Umar wanted to fight people who
Yes.
want to give zakat. So
Yeah. So exactly. So if you deny zakat, you leave Islam. Okay. Full stop. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anh says no. If you don't give zakat, we will force you to give it with the sword. And Omar radiallahu anhu's like anxious. He's like, no, 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 we gotta manage this politically. We gotta negotiate. We gotta, maybe like we can get less zakat for them or something. So Umar radiallahu anhu's trying to advise Abu Bakr to, okay, settle down. We don't need to go to war, this and that. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh says, look, if anyone, right, who has given us bay'ah, who accepted Islam at the hands of the Prophet ﷺ, and they're making excuses and they try to depart from the ummah, we're going to war. Okay? And that's exactly what Abu Bakr radiallahu anh does, right?
Okay.
And because this is one of the best things that Abu Bakr radiallahu anh did, because those tribes, remember, a lot of those tribes, they accepted Islam, but they didn't spend a lot of time with the Prophet, right? They accepted Islam because they saw that the Prophet was strong, right? Because those Arab tribes, they respected strength. And so when the Prophet died, they thought, "Oh, who's this guy, Abu Bakr? He's weak. We can just have our way, right? We can just sort of do whatever we want again. We can go back to Jahiliyyah, to the days of ignorance." Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu's like, "No, this is not the same era. We are in a different era, right? You either come with us or you're eliminated, right?" And no one expected him to make such a strong stance. And so he goes to war, sends Khalid ibn Walid, and all of these tribes, they're like, okay, yeah, we'll stay Muslim. We don't need to fight. We're good. And they pay the zakat, right? They pay the zakat. So so this is a very important event in Islamic history, and it solidified Islam in the Arabian Peninsula. And thank God, alhamdulillah, everyone stayed united. It's like the Civil War, right? It's like the Civil War with Abraham Lincoln. No one expected Abraham Lincoln to be that strict, but it's a good thing that he was, or else the United States would be a fifth world country, right? With slaves and so on and so forth. The same thing with Ahmed ibn Hanbal. Ahmed ibn Hanbal, he was not a rich person. Actually, he was very poor. Uh, uh, he was very well known because of his knowledge. He became well known. And he is the only person in Muslim history who has memorized 1 million hadith. Okay? He's 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 Ra'is al-Huffaz, the greatest Hafiz. Okay, and you only get this title if you, I think, if you memorize like 100,000 hadith, you get the title of Hafiz. I'm not sure about the number. I think it's 100,000 or it could be 500,000. I'm not sure. So Hafiz ibn Hajar, okay? Hafiz al-Haytami. So whenever you see the word Hafiz before a scholar's name, it means they've memorized a certain number of hadith. Okay, in the hadith sciences. I'm not talking about like modern times, like, um, uh, Hafiz XYZ. No, that means they memorized the Quran. Okay, in modern times. But when you look in the hadith sciences, when you look at a classical scholar, right? uh, when you see the word Hafiz in front of them, it means they memorized X number of hadith. Okay? So you might be asking, how are there 1 million hadiths? Like, how is that even possible? Can anyone give me an answer? Are there actually 1 million unique narrations from the Prophet ﷺ?
Uh, no, I think they would be duplicated, right? From different perspective, different Sahabas.
Good, good. So this is how you reach 1 million. So when we say he memorized 1 million hadith, we're saying that he memorized 1 million different chains of hadith. So, for example, let's say the hadith of إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, that all actions are by intentions. So this could come through the chain of Umar radiallahu anh. It could come through the chain of somebody else. It could come through the chain of somebody else. And let's say it only came through Umar radiallahu anh. Well, it could branch out into like five, six people after him. And then it could branch out even further. Okay? And it all converges back into this one hadith, the meaning. So you have to memorize all of these chains, every single one of these chains. Okay? So for one hadith, there could be like 200 different chains. Some of those chains are authentic, some of those chains are forged, some of those chains are incorrect or weak, right? So the Huffaz, the people of Hadith, they would memorize all these different chains and compare and contrast. It's like being a sort of a journalist. I mean, this is like an insane level of journalism, right? And fact verification. So they would compare and contrast these chains and determine which chains were authentic, which ones were not. Okay. So Ahmed ibn Hanbal is the only one so far that we know that have memorized a million narrations. Okay. So this is why he's one of the greatest scholars of the Muslims. And he is also the author of Al-Musnad. Al-Musnad. So this book is 20 volumes. Okay? So this is all of the hadiths that are organized by the Sahaba. So if you open up the Musnad Ahmad ibn Hanbal, the first person that you see on there is Abu Bakr. Okay? All of the hadiths of Abu Bakr. And then you go into Alif, Ba, Ta, Tha, and so on and so forth. It's organized by companions. Okay? So, and he is also the founder of which madhab? The fourth madhab, right? The Hanbali madhab. So he did not intentionally found the Hanbali madhab. He actually didn't like um, sort of people following him or creating madhabs. He didn't like the concept of madhab to begin with, right? Like because in this early period, everyone was a hadith scholar. They were searching for the hadith. They were searching for the truth. So he didn't like the idea of telling people just follow me. Okay. Actually, Abu Hanifa is the opposite. Abu Hanifa, he gave fatwa to people out of caution. Caution for what? Out of fear that they will take a fatwa from somebody ignorant. So instead of them going to somebody ignorant, he gave a fatwa to them. Okay? To use his knowledge. Okay? But there are other scholars, especially people from the Hanbali school, that because out of their modesty, their humility, they didn't want to present themselves to other people. And this is why the Hanbalis have the least judge roles in Islamic history. Okay? They they do not spend a lot of time being judges over people. But in the modern period, they do. In which country? Which country has the dominant madhab of Hanbalism?
Saudi.
Saudi Arabia. Good. So in modern period, yeah. But in the past, very few Hanbali judges. Very few. Why? Not because the madhab wasn't, popular, this or that, but the Hanbalis actively avoided public position, right? And they actively avoided trying to, be in the forefront and um, sort of present themselves as these, because why? Because most of the people of Tasawwuf, of Sufism, they were associated with the Hanbali madhab, right? That the Hanbali madhab is a very deeply spiritual madhab. And this is why you find a lot of the Sufis coming out of the Hanbali madhab. The greatest Sufi, one of the greatest people of Tasawwuf, is Abdul Qadir Jilani. Abdul Qadir Jilani. Which madhab do you think Abdul Qadir Jilani was? He was Hanbali, right? He was Hanbali. Um, and so his tariqah of Tasawwuf is still Hanbali till this day, right? Um, I'm trying to think of somebody. Ali al-Harawi, right? The Afghan, the great Sufi poet, writer, author, right? Spiritual writer. He is also Hanbali, right? So there are many, many Sufis from the Hanabila, Ibn Qudama radiallahu an, right? Ali al-Maqdisi, all these people. They come from the Hanbali madhab. And obviously, their principle is not to show off, not to be in public, not to sort of do these things. And so their madhab did not spend a lot of time in qada, in doing, in being judges over people. Okay. And this is also reflected when you study their fiqh books. Okay. Their fiqh books are much easier to understand than the Hanafi ones. I'll tell you that. Okay. And the reason is because they're mostly dealing with regular people, whereas the Hanafis are dealing with issues of state, paperwork, bureaucracy, so on and so forth. But anyway, Ahmed ibn Hanbal, he was an incredibly ascetic person, and he comes into this controversy because he was one of the scholars that would not submit. Okay, he would not submit to Al-Ma'mun's inquisition. And he started, and he came into the sort of the parlor of the caliph, and he held famous debates with the Mu'tazila about why the Quran is uncreated. Okay, so there's like a TV show you can even watch on YouTube um, that details his life, Ahmed ibn Hanbal. Okay, so it's a nice. I'll link it in the chat. So he would not submit, and he debated the Mu'tazila on this issue, and uh, he suffered a lot under Al-Ma'mun, a tremendous amount. They jailed him, they tortured him. I mean, they did every single thing you can imagine to him, right? Um, uh, and they kept him in jail for a very long time. Uh, Imam al-Shafi'i, who is the teacher of Ahmed ibn Hanbal, right? Imam al-Shafi'i sees a dream of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam speaking about Ahmed ibn Hanbal and saying that this man will protect the Sunnah of this age. So inform him about this. Tell him to be patient. So Imam al-Shafi'i sends a letter to Ahmed ibn Hanbal, uh, and because Imam al-Shafi'i now is in Egypt, okay? And at this time, when he saw the dream, Ahmed ibn Hanbal is enjoying his popularity and, nothing bad is happening to him. And when he receives this instruction from Imam Shafi that, look, the Prophet ﷺ came to me in a dream and said this, right? That you're going to be tested, that you're going to suffer a lot, but do not give up. And so Ahmed ibn Hanbal takes this very seriously. Okay, and he does not give up. He's almost killed in the prison, but the caliph is sort of trying not to kill him because this would lead to a rebellion, right? So they torture him a lot to concede the fact that the Quran is created. He does not do so. And Al-Ma'mun dies, he passes away. Ahmad ibn Hanbal makes a lot of dua against Al-Ma'mun. Al-Ma'mun dies, and the next caliph, he sort of changes this whole policy. Okay. So this is why Ahmed ibn Hanbal uh, was the key figure of Sunnism in his time. This is why he became so famous. Okay, we only have 2 minutes, so I'll try to summarize the controversy and we'll pick up on this next week, inshallah. So the rationalist view was saying that if the Quran is Allah's speech and speech involves sound and language, then the conclusion is that God's speech is created. Okay? If speech is sound and language, like I'm saying right now, you're hearing me through the speakers of your computers. This is sound, and I'm using language. I'm using the English language. So both of these things are created, yes or no?
Right.
They're created. So if God's speech, right, that's what we're talking about, is sound and language, then yes, God's speech must be created. Okay?
Mhm.
So if the Quran is Allah's speech, the Quran must be what? Created. Na'udhu billah, right? The Sunni view, and this is a view that you don't find explicitly mentioned in the Quran or explicitly mentioned in Hadith, but this is a view that comes from ijma, from the consensus of the community. You see? So the people that keep saying we only follow Quran and Sunnah, what about this? Where do you get this view that Allah's speech is uncreated? Point to me to a verse. Point me to a hadith. Not a single one, right? There are verses and hadith I will show that indicate that Allah's speech is uncreated, but there's nothing explicit like this. So this view comes from ijma, the consensus of the community. All the Muslim community, the scholars, the pious scholars of the past, and the Salaf and the companions, they agreed on this view that Allah's speech is uncreated. Why is it uncreated? Allah's speech is an attribute of Allah. Okay? Allah's speech is an eternal attribute of God. For us, speech happens, right? For example, like I'm speaking now, I remain silent. So speech involves sound and letters. But for Allah, speech is an attribute of His essence. It's an eternal attribute. So if it's an eternal attribute and the Quran is Allah's speech, then the Quran is what?
Eternal.
The Quran is eternal. Good. You see? So, but if you say that the Quran is created, we have a big problem then you're saying Allah's attribute of speech is created. And if you're saying Allah's attribute of speech is created, then you're saying there's an attribute of Allah that is created. And now what are you doing? You're assigning something created to Allah. You're comparing Allah to His creation. You're saying there's a part of Allah that's created. How can you believe in a God that has a part that's created, right? So remember, we said we have to negate any type of tashbih, any type of deficiency from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? So this is the gist of the argument that the between the Mu'tazila and Ahl Sunnah, and we're going to get into the proofs of how do we understand what does it mean that the Quran is uncreated? How like I have a Quran on my shelf right here. Like how can we resolve the fact that the words, letters, and sounds of the Quran come into time, right? Obviously, because we just published a Quran, you can see there are different versions of the different editions of the Quran on my shelf. So obviously, the pages and the ink and things like this, they are created, right? We see it with our own eyes. But then, what do we mean when we say that the Quran is uncreated? So that's what we'll talk about, inshallah, next time, right? Okay, any questions? No questions?
Nope.
All right. Everyone happy with the quiz?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, awesome, inshallah. I'll see you guys next week. And
Inshallah.
I'll link that TV series. You guys can watch. Uh, okay, inshallah. I'll see you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.